All right, I'm Chris Savannah with American Outdoor News, and today we have a repeat guest, Paul Hutchinson. We spoke a little while back about your work that you've done with child trafficking, working with the government, breaking up child trafficking rings, and so important what you do. But we didn't cover last time, but we ran out of time, was things to look for. I mean, what what is the profile of some of these people that you've encountered?
Well, Chris, that's the scary part. Most of these traffickers and pedophiles that we've taken down, you wouldn't notice that they're any different than the guy next door in a lot of cases. People think, oh yeah, let's be careful of guys who have, big beards and dark glasses and wearing this. No, these are guys that try to blend in. It's and I can't tell you how many times where we've taken down a bust and the traffickers look like any other guy on the street. And so what you need to be looking for, though, is more of the behavior of your kids, because when they make themselves out as a victim, then they're a bigger target. So teaching healthy self-esteem in your children is one of the most important things you can do. Teach them to look people in the eyes and not walk around, on their cell phones looking down all the time and hunched over and acting like a victim. Put them in some self-defense classes so that they're confident in their ability to deal with an issue if that ever happens. That's super important. It's also important to teach your children that indeed there are hundreds of thousands of predators online right now looking through social media things of the kids and looking for potential opportunities and victims. I'll tell you an example. Years ago, we had a rescue that was in a beach town in Latin America, and we had scheduled this over New Year's because there was a lot. The federal agent said there was a lot of trafficking going on around the holidays, around New Year's in this area. Because a lot of wealthy Americans would come down for parties and whatever. And so we went in undercover for a few weeks to identify where the traffickers were so that we could set up the sting over the New Year's weekend. And I was dating a girl at the time, and she wanted to be with me over the holidays. And I'm like, no, I'm doing this work. I'm traveling. She goes, just let me come and, can I just stay at a resort that's close to where you are so we can, be. So I said, okay. So we flew her down. She was staying at a resort away from where we were. She had her cousin with her. Now her cousin had just turned 18, but her cousin looked like she was, like 14. She looked a lot younger. Okay. And she was down there advertising on her social media, hey, we're down here in this beach town area. We're, just having a fun time. Well, she comes to me and she shows me her phone and she said, Paul, look at this guy. He's a guide, and he saw me posting that we were down here, and he wants to take me and your girlfriend on a free boat ride. He tour around on the islands and stuff around here, and he has jet skis and stuff, and he wants to just take us for free. This looks fun. And she showed me his picture. Chris, this was one of the traffickers. This is one of the guys that was selling us children as young as 7 years old. And he was reaching out to tourists that were down there that in his mind looked like they were down there without parents. And reaching out to them, because I guess on social media streams you can identify people who are in the area who are just posting and saying, okay, look for this. And so he was profiling people that looked like they were there without parents, to see if he could bring them into his network. This is how he was bringing in some of these children. So, you know, super important to be extra vigilant about what the children are posting online, and what kind of information is out there to the public, because you don't know what these guys are looking for.
That brings us into a whole different category. I've traveled all over the world with my son as an infant through, now, he's an adult, we travel. What precautions can a parent take, taking their children overseas to the islands, going to Europe or wherever they're taking them? What, how can they safely being with their child on
I'll tell you
vacation?
So to put people's minds at ease, the percentage of children and victims that we rescue that were abducted from affluent families when they are traveling or even at their homes is very low. It doesn't mean that there's still not a big problem. The majority of children that are trafficked are taken from broken homes, are taken from the foster system, from runaways. A runaway child is brought into that world within days of running away, because they are the highest profile. They're ones that nobody cares about. You're not going to have a family that's putting massive resources into looking for a child if they're coming from a super broken home, or from a situation where they're in a state-run home, whatever. And so those are the ones who are the highest victims. Or unfortunately, in a lot of these third world countries, they're very, very poor families. In Southeast Asia and Thailand, more than half the children we rescued in Thailand were sold by their own families. And so there's challenges like that from a poverty standpoint where you've got to deal with. The number one problem, and this is super important, you have 1,000 times higher chance of your child being a victim of abuse, of sexual abuse in your own home, in your own neighborhood, than you ever will having them abducted and taken. Now, the parent's thinking, oh, well, the worst thing ever is if my child is actually physically taken from me and sold. Well, yes, that is. That's a horrible thing. But you have to understand that worldwide right now, there are approximately 8 million children who are being sold in trafficking, physically owned children that are sold by these traffickers. 8 million sounds like a big number. However, there's over 1 billion women on this planet who were a victim of sexual violence as a child. In fact, there's over 200 million men who experienced sexual violence under the age of 10 years old, and most of them in their own homes. And so this is where the biggest problem is. In fact, this is the reason why I've decided to go public, is because I've realized that just going undercover and rescuing 20 children at a time was never going to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. Because if we didn't do anything to fix the demand, then it would just create another vacuum. And so by teaching people how to keep their children safe in their own homes, or by helping adolescents and young adults who had experienced that kind of trauma as a child, and if we can help them heal before they pass on that trauma in any form, we'll save millions of children. Because some of them grow up with low self-esteem and issues with themselves. Others grow up and they pass on that trauma with either sexual abuse or physical abuse, or even just verbal abuse is still passing on that to that next generation. And so the number one thing that you can do as a parent is to build that self-esteem in your child, not only so they don't get abducted, but so that they can be strong against Uncle Harry or whoever is going to be babysitting them, so they can know who they are, and be super careful what kind of people are alone with your children ever, because that's where that abuse happens, and that's going to affect their entire life.
Yeah. Wow. And that's, that's a staggering number. Okay.
So
yeah, those numbers are really staggering, that it could be just about anybody. Could be your neighbor, your soccer coach, a family member, which I think is more prevalent than abduction, according to what you were saying.
Knife, you're frozen. Yeah, it really could be. Yeah, it's not just the guy that's working at the strip club in Colombia. This could be a next door neighbor. This could be, understand that about 1 in every 4 households in the world have situations in their own homes where children have been abused. And so it's a scarier world out there than just having your child taken in a third world country, because it's affecting their entire life when that kind of travesty is allowed to happen. And so building your children's self-esteem, helping them be super careful about what they're posting online, and helping them respect their body and others as well, and understand what barriers are, what boundaries are, what is not okay to cross. Have those conversations with your children when they're young, so that they can feel comfortable coming to you and saying, hey, this guy makes me feel uncomfortable. This is what happened. And so that's what's going to keep them safe. And there's a lot of children that get groomed in their own neighborhoods by people who would try to get them to be involved. We did a rescue once. This little girl, she was 12 years old, just turned 13 actually. Her babysitter was her aunt, and her aunt was friends with some of these traffickers, and her aunt started showing this little girl pornography when she was babysitting her, and to desensitize her. And then she told this little girl, hey, you're going to lose your virginity sometime anyway. If you lose it to these rich Americans, then you can earn $500. Well, she was charging us $5,000 for this poor little girl in this sting operation. And the mother had no idea what was going on. It was the aunt that was babysitting this little girl that was desensitizing her with pornography and working with the traffickers. So this kind of thing happens a lot. We had another little girl. It was an American. Her and her sister were being raised by the grandmother, and the grandmother was a loving lady, but not very attentive. And this little 13-year-old and her sister, who was 17, told the grandma, hey, we're going to go travel internationally. We're going to go travel together. And so they during the summer, so they left for about a month. Grandma said, okay, be safe, have fun. Well, these 2 little girls ran out of money, and they didn't want to call their grandma and tell her that they were out of money. And so the 17-year-old had found this guy who was grooming her. He was a trafficker, but made her think that he could really be her boyfriend or whatever. And so she started doing some parties and stuff with them. And then her little 13-year-old sister, the traffickers took her and drugged her and were trafficking this little girl. So, this is the kind of situations the grandma just thought they were out on vacation and was just extending longer. And so it's there are predators everywhere, and those predators could be in third world countries. They could be your next door neighbor. They could be your brother or brother-in-law. There's a lot of predators that you just need to be aware that especially if your next door neighbor or your brother-in-law has had some kind of trauma themselves that has been unresolved as children. Sometimes that trauma comes out in healthy ways where they're like, you know what, I'm gonna do some great things in the world and prove to the world that that's not me and whatever. Other times it comes out in unhealthy ways where their perception of intimacy is really skewed, and they end up passing on that trauma and verbal, physical, or even sexual abuse to other children. So those are what our goal is to help people heal before it gets passed on in any form.
Well, what kind of child behavior should a parent look for if they suspect something is going on?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So any kind of changes to your child's self-esteem should be looked at very carefully. You know, too many parents think, oh, my child's self-esteem is down because they're being bullied at school. No, maybe they're being bullied at school because their self-esteem is down, because there's some abuse situations that are happening. And that's more common than not. So if your child is dealing with some self-esteem issues and they're not getting along well with others at school, they're having a hard time with their homework, they're having extra nightmares, they're becoming socially distant, not only at school, but in situations in your own family. Those are signs to be looking for, and needs immediate intervention in making sure that you as the parent are spending time with that child, building their self-esteem, building your relationship with them so that they feel comfortable in coming to you with any kind of issues. If that relationship isn't there, they're very isolated, and they're probably being told by the predator that they will harm their family, or they will be harmed themselves, and so there's fear there. So if there's an undue amount of fear that your child is having about things that doesn't make sense to you, why are they scared of this? Why are they scared of talking to people? Why are they scared? Whatever it is, if there's extra fear, that fear is probably being propagated by a predator who is manipulating them with fear to hurt them and take advantage of them. So those are all signs to be watching for with the children: low self-esteem, changes in their behavior and their social interactions, and fear that's coming out from any kind of direction are signs that there may be some underlying issues that need to be dealt with. And so spend that time with your child, build that relationship with them, build their self-esteem, and figure out really what's going on.
Well, I know in the U.S., roughly 2,300 children are abducted per day. The number of children that are sexually abused has to be astronomical.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. 40% of all the women you know in America have been a victim of sexual violence. 40%, almost half. Wow. 40% of all women in the US. And the average age of somebody who comes out and says, this is what happened to me as a child, the average age is 52 years old. So they're holding this inside of them their entire life. They're raising their children and working their jobs, holding this trauma inside of themselves. Now, the number with men is a little bit lower, but it's still 1 in 5. 20% of all men have been a victim of sexual violence. That's still super high. Absolutely. And so, you know, you look at those kind of numbers, you realize this is an epidemic. And this is why I'm focusing on this kind of healing, because when I started looking into the cause, the demand of child trafficking, I came to an understanding that I thought that a long time that it was just addiction to pornography that was leading to it, where, you know, when you take a woman from a divine feminine to an object and you start going down a dark road, and sometimes these guys who are addicted want something harder to have that same fix, and for some of them harder is a little bit younger. Pretty soon they're fantasizing about things they wouldn't have even thought was attractive 5 years ago. I thought that was a demand. That's what we have to fix, is this pornography thing. And I've realized that no, that's a symptom as well, right? Just like the trafficking is a symptom, the pornography is a symptom of a deeper underlying issue. And that deeper underlying issue are people who have had some type of trauma in their life that is causing that behavior. And so if we can get down to that root cause, and it's not just people who are sexually abused. I mean, there are people who never had an angry word in their home. They were never physically abused. They were never sexually abused, but they ended up with their own type of trauma in their houses as well. Maybe their father never said, "I love you." Maybe he never gave them a hug. Maybe they had an absentee mother or father in their home. Whatever, they were dealing with some emotional issues that they held and felt guilty for, even though it wasn't their fault. And being able to help them let go of that judgment, let go of that guilt, and recover and heal, that's what it's going to take to help literally transform a generation, so that we're not creating generational abuse and creating this demand for the trafficking world that we've been fighting.
So there's always some kind of root cause of the abuse.
Yeah. That's the root of it, is that hurt people will hurt other people. Healed people will help heal people. And that's really what it's all about, is creating that healing. And so, you know, a lot of my focus right now, we have the Child Liberation Foundation has been helping to eradicate child trafficking for many years. And the majority of the money of that foundation would go to rescue efforts and rehabilitation and safe houses, things like that. Our new focus with that foundation is to not just help fund the rescue of trafficked children, but to help rescue the 10-year-old child inside of a 30, 40-year-old man or woman who's been dealing with some of that issue for the majority of their life. And so not only are we helping to build safe houses, we are helping to create healing retreats for adults who want to shed some of the childhood trauma that they're dealing with. And they'll come in for a 2 or 3 or 4 day intensive healing opportunity, where we'll use everything from animals with equine therapy to drum healing and breath work and deep meditation. Even in some of the ones that we're doing in Jamaica and Mexico and others, using different types of plants, of plant medicine, to help release that trauma and get through that in a way where we can create real long-term change within a period of a few days of intensive trauma therapy. So that's what we're working with, and that's what I'm putting a lot of my focus and time into, is these healing retreats and these healing opportunities, where we'll bring in adults who want to overcome some challenges of their childhood and help them within 24 to 48 hours have more breakthroughs than what they've seen with traditional therapy in 10 plus years.
So that's treating depression, anxiety, and everything else that comes along with it.
Yeah, absolutely. We specialize in PTSD for especially for operators, our special forces guys or Green Berets, Navy SEALs that we've worked with on a lot of our missions. So having PTSD focus, helping people with anxiety and depression, even if that anxiety and depression didn't come from their childhood, helping them work through that, helping people with anger issues, helping people learn how to love themselves, especially if they dealt with some kind of childhood trauma. There's a lot of lack of self-love that people deal with year after year after year. And so being able to help them redefine themselves and not define themselves by the trauma of their past or the things that happened to them or even the things that they did, help them let the past be in the past, focus on the present and on where they're going, shed that trauma, let go of guilt, let go of judgment, let go of pain, let go of anger, let go of fear, and step into this new light of healing. That's what our primary focus is now in putting together, and we do them almost every other weekend, where we'll pull together adults who want to have a healing experience. Some of them, I took a bunch of religious leaders and doctors to Jamaica in January to give them their first experience with using some plant medicine tools, some psychedelic type tools to work through their issues. And it was beautiful and transformational. We had to take them there because a lot of those things aren't legal in areas of the US yet, but we're working on those. But we have other ones that are here in the US where we have people with these intensive, breath work trainings and sound bowl and working with the horses and stuff like that, where we help people transform their lives in 2 to 3 days, coming away with a truly transformational experience. That's because if I can help the adults heal from their trauma, their crap, whatever it is, then they can turn around and be much better parents in showing up for their children and living from a place of the heart, leading from a place of the heart, and being more sensitive to the needs of their kids so that we don't have generational trauma that is passed on.
Sure. Well, it's we really appreciate all the work that you do. Because it's so important, especially in today's day and age, where something like this is more and more prevalent. I want to thank you for that. And where can people find you? Well, I guess we lost our connection here, but I'll have the contact information for Paul in the closing credits. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at American Outdoor News, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you again.
We love our children. We protect them. We guide them. We prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do, from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstance, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the hardest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofalifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a non-profit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference.